These are difficult times if you're doing independent research and trying to find answers and understanding as about what has happened in the pandemic, because there is a very strong determination that the pandemic is behind us and it's time to move forward. What I'm going to be talking about today is a recent study coming out of France showing that if you are vaccinated, you are going to be protected from literally everything if you've had the COVID vaccine. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is incredible stuff that really I'll show you why this makes absolutely no sense. Additionally, I'll be looking at what's happening in the UK with Christopher Whitty, looking at silencing ethics, and we'll see why these two things come together at a time where things are so very difficult to understand. Hang fire, let's see if we can make sense of all of this. So, as I said, this study that has come out of France, and it's a huge, it's a population level study, looking at a COVID mRNA vaccination and 4 year all cause mortality among adults aged 18 to 59 years in France. And they were probably hearing all of the complaints about mortality and whether or not the mortality has increased. And you have to understand that all of these studies are aiming to exclude COVID vaccination as part of it. They will accept that COVID infection is causing the problem, but they will not accept that the COVID vaccination campaign has anything to do with that. There are a number of reasons why, one of them being liability, politicians, industry. There's so many factors that would influence that. And in truth, does it really matter at this point? Well, the only reason why I'm focused on it is simply because if it is relevant, we need to understand why. Because if you don't understand the pathophysiology, you cannot mitigate disease manifestations. And what it will mean is that you would have embedded in the population specific factors that can influence population health negatively and allow it to continue indefinitely until it can no longer be denied. This is exactly what happened with smoking. In the 1950s, they recognized there was an issue. The lobbying from the industry made them push back on it. They then allowed it to pass. It became embedded in society for 30 to 40 years until the health implications were so significant that they couldn't deny it anymore. And in effect, they have gone to the extent that they are largely banning smoking in most of the first world countries where you can't do it at work, in schools, in certain places. This is the impact that has happened, and you think how many lives could have been saved if they had just done the work and made the decisions in the 1950s for what they had seen. History has shown us multiple things like this, similarly with asbestos, and so here we are post pandemic, we seem to be facing another issue like this. So let's look carefully at what they were doing. So, as I said, they were looking at a cohort 18 to 59 years old, and they were looking for all cause mortality, which is always a good sign. I'm going to show you the conclusion here because this was a total of 22 million vaccinated versus 5.9 million unvaccinated. And they found no increase 4 year all cause mortality risk in individuals 18 to 59 years old who were vaccinated. That sounds like great news. And the problem I have is that when you see stuff like that, you think to yourself, hold on, I've just spent the last 4 years shouting about the fact that excess mortality is elevated. How in the world is this possible? So that's my thought. So what I then do is I just go back to the numbers and I'm interested in, okay, if we had those kinds of numbers, how does it pan out in the context of mortality in France? So that's what I was interested in. And so then I put in the analysis, put in the actual numbers that we have, and here's what it looks like. When you look on the left here, this is the total amount of deaths per year. This is 680,000 as the peak, and about 590,000, 95,000. And I followed from 2016 to 2024. And in blue, it's the gray line overlies it. But in the blue is the actual numbers. And I have predicted up to 2021, these numbers would be about equivalent. And let's just say the vaccine made a huge difference. This is what happened in 2022. Mortality actually increased, comes down in 2023, increases again in 2024. When you include what we call the mortality debt, that if the vaccines were stopping so many people dying, then what you should have is a significant drop off in mortality below the trend line, and it would gradually be coming back to meet that trend line. That's not what has happened. And this huge gap here means that something isn't right. And my feeling is that what is not right is that probably in France, they're pretending more people died. That's probably what it is. That's the only thing that makes sense. It can't be that the predictions from the studies that they have done don't fit the narrative. Something is wrong. So here are some reasons why I think that this may have happened. And I'm not a statistician, and part of the problem is that, how do I say this? I don't think at this point anybody is going to be honest anymore. You either came out before and stood the fire of criticism, or you remain silent, and you will always remain silent. And what you will do is aim to try and protect your interests by ignoring all of these signals. So the sad part I have come to the conclusion for here is that I don't think any of the general scientific community is ever going to do a study that shows anything different. So the truth is that I don't know if I can trust it. Sadly, I don't know if I can trust it. When you look in detail at, say, this study here, um, I'll show you this here. When essentially, when you look at lower risk and higher risk, this line here represents a 0 point where the risk is equal between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. In this study, it shows remarkable. I mean, whatever your age, if you are vaccinated, you're protected. Whether you're male, whether you're female, whatever region in the world, in France you are protected. All the way down, everything is showing protection. Even if you are in the most deprived area of France, if you are vaccinated, you are protected. This is incredible. I mean, this is so good that what they should be doing is not just doing a study. They should be saying, forget the medication you're taking, just get the vaccine. You will be protected. That's how incredible these studies are showing. And guess what? It's not just in relation to direct health related things that it's showing benefit. When you look at this part here, this is another table, comparison between vaccinated and unvaccinated, hazard ratio. Anything that is below 1 is suggesting that it is protected. So they are looking at the incidence per million here, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Now look at this. This is incredible. In terms of external causes of morbidity and mortality, including transport crashes, falls, drowning, unintentional injuries, suicide, self-inflicted injuries, every single one of them you are protected from if you are vaccinated. Wow. I mean, this could solve our mental health crisis. This is incredible. And I hope you understand the sarcasm here, because this is just, I mean, seriously, The problem we've got now is that people are dying. We don't know why. If you don't want it to be related to COVID vaccines and the pandemic, please tell us how COVID is doing it. My argument is that it is not simply about just the vaccine. It is the combination of a highly vaccinated region being reinfected with this spike protein virus that is causing unusual immune dysregulation. And this is what's driving the excess mortality. We are not necessarily, as far as I can see, there are no flags from the WHO that low vaccinated parts of the world, like Haiti, 2.7% vaccinated, Papua New Guinea, 4.5% vaccinated, they are not having any mortality flags. They don't seem to have morbidity flags. The pandemic is over in those parts of the world. So something doesn't make sense. And I mean, how long does it take for people to actually look at this stuff? So here is where I think all of this is coming from. So I'm showing you a Telegraph article that has just come out today, and when you reflect carefully on it, you realize the implications of what is happening. So Christopher Whitty was the lead in terms of the UK for the COVID vaccine, and what they're saying here in a big article in the Telegraph, give them credit. Whitty silenced COVID ethics advisors. So what happens is they said certain whistleblowers are saying the group was sidelined after raising unwelcome concerns about lockdowns and the vaccine. You know, they were saying things like vaccination saves lives, but it's invasive, it's irreversible, and may have long-term side effects as yet unidentified. This is barn door simple stuff. So this was just published here on the 6th of December. And essentially, they had a group, the Moral and Ethical Advisor Group, was set up to advise him and senior ministers on the complex policy questions expected to arise in the pandemic. However, they fell out of favor as they raised concerns about the passports. At the height of the pandemic, Sir Chris told its co-chairman to stop putting its recommendation in writing. So, what we have here is a situation that certain determinations were made at a political level that were not necessarily scientific or ethical, but they were so sure of what they were doing. I have no idea why, that they were willing to ignore whatever recommendations or whatever cautions were being put in place. Now that brown stuff is starting to hit the fan, everybody is locking down. Nobody wants to talk. Interestingly, and this is how far it goes. When you look at it, so far, the COVID inquiry. So let me give you context here. What has happened is that there is a UK COVID inquiry. They are looking at all aspects of the pandemic, and they are trying to work out what was right, what was wrong, where things can be learned. It's supposed to be an objective inquiry looking at how we can do things better. So, within that framework, the COVID inquiry has failed to examine the role of this MEAG group, despite being urged to do so. So, they don't want to touch this. One former member of the MEAG said they were astounded that the group did not feature at all in the inquiry's latest report, which was published last month. As I said, this is no longer about what is the best thing to do. This is now about everybody trying to protect themselves. And they're protecting themselves at the expense of the public. I am just calling it out as straight as it can be. You can understand when everybody's afraid. Nobody wants to take responsibility, because this is what happens in the cultures that we have. Anybody who sticks their neck out and said, yes, this was a mistake, suddenly their liability considerations, they will lose their job. All of this is happening. And the reality is, this is what happened in the pandemic, which is why so many people stayed silent, even though they knew that what they were seeing was not right. When they saw people losing their jobs because of vaccine mandates, they stayed silent. When they saw people were unable to fly, unable to travel, unable to see relatives, they stayed silent. And so the same thinking is there at the moment. If anything, the COVID pandemic has demonstrated is that our populations don't really care about anything outside of themselves. That makes me have something in my throat because it's such a frightening concept. The reality of this is so frightening because it means that nobody seems to really have learned any lessons. We're just going beyond what had happened before, and people are just going to keep on doing what they do as long as it doesn't touch them. And if that's the culture that we are in, I warn you that if there were people who were taking advantage of the situation, you would have emboldened them that they can do it again. And when they do it again, you will not be concerned unless it directly touches you. And this is the culture that we're in. And I can't seem to make an impact on the political or the leading scientific community. And if the population as a whole is willing to step back and let these things pass, then what can we do? We just accept, because based on that study that I showed you coming out of France, if this study is correct, and if you have no questions about this, and if you are not insisting about it, you can expect someone to suggest that with this kind of benefit across the population, mandates should come back again because this is such a valuable health measure. Just vaccinate them and just keep on vaccinating them. They will be protected against all-cause mortality. We will be making the population healthier. That's what this study is suggesting. Where do we go from here? The reality is that the only way out of this is autopsies, in my view. They will never do them, because I guarantee you, if they do them, that will destroy any narrative, because it will show clearly that immune responses, immune dysregulation is driving pathology everywhere. And that cannot therefore be allowed to happen, because only without autopsies can they do studies like that and get away with telling the public, don't worry, move on. It doesn't matter that more people are dying. It's certainly not because of this. It's because of infection. That's what you're being told. That's what you're going to have to live with. And you'll have to face the consequences of it within the next 5 to 10 years. That is the reality. Nothing else that I can do. Try and keep awareness of it. I'll try and see if I can break down over time what is going wrong with you, because nobody else seems to care. Have a great evening.
A hero, an immune adventure. Humming Heroes, your lyrical guide to the body's defenders. Now on Amazon. Check the links below.